Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. And thank you especially to the people who make this possible for you every single day with their support at patreon.com/SW7x7. All right, the Acolyte season finale is tomorrow, and we are going to be talking about Mae and Osha, what we've learned over the course of the season, just at a very high level with the two of them, and see how it might bear on what happens in the finale. We'll start with Mae, who in the flashback portions of the season just wanted Osha to stay and to be part of the family and to continue on the ascension path, just maintain everything as it was. And obviously that didn't happen because of the Jedi meddling in the witch's affairs and Mae's selfishness about not wanting Osha to go and deciding that she'd rather Osha be dead than gone. And then, of course, the tragedy with Saul not being able to save both Osha and Mae and letting Mae fall to her presumed death, which is obviously not what happened. The death, And so it seemed like it was going to be pretty cut and dry for a while that Mae was going to do her best to take out the 4 Jedi who were on Brendok, and whatever happened to her by the end of it is whatever happened to her by the end of it. But I think what we all suspected is that she wouldn't necessarily get away with it and that she would ultimately be brought to justice. That clearly is not what's happened. And for that matter, Mae has kind of turned a new leaf. At one point, when she realizes that Osha is still alive, because she didn't know, she says, well, this changes the game. Like, I don't have to be working for this Sith Lord, this crazy Master Stranger person, and I can help Osha and be reunited with her and ask the Jedi for forgiveness. Especially if I can help deliver a Sith Lord to them, right? Seemed like a reasonable, rational thing, except of course Chimere wanted none of that, and neither did Osha. Osha didn't want to reconcile with her either. Osha was like, yeah, Mae, you're a criminal, you're gonna pay for your crimes, and that's it. And without anything left to her, without Chimere, without Osha, the only thing remaining is Master Saul and finishing the job that she had started, first at the behest of her master, but now it's at her own desire, and because ultimately Saul is the person who turned Osha against Mae, and so it makes sense for Mae to try to just kill Saul and have that be the end of everything. Obviously, that's not what's happened, and so Mae now gets to hear, she doesn't really hear much more that's different about what happened on Brendok. After all, Mae was there when Saul killed Mother Anastasia, so that's not new news, right? I think the thing that we don't necessarily really understand very well is for that retelling of the fateful night on Brendok and the events leading up to it, how much of that is stuff that Saul actually told Mae, right? At the end of episode 6, Saul said, I've been thinking about what I might say to you if I ever had the opportunity to do so. And it kind of seems like the answer to that is episode 7 in its way, but it may not be. If it is, then the key pieces that Mae is learning out of this is that the Jedi Council initially told the assembled Jedi in Brendok that they were not supposed to have anything to do with Mae and Osha, and then they found out about their blood test results, and then Torben had a little nutty and went off, and Saul followed, and then everything just kind of went sideways from there. And the other thing that Mae would have learned is that Saul did his best to try to save her and was unable to do so. And I don't know how that's going to go over. I don't think Mae is going to be like, I forgive you for that. I think Mae is going to be looking for an opportunity to escape at best and to kill Saul and escape at worst by the end of the season. Meanwhile, we have Osha, who decided that she very much wanted to leave the witches and go to the Jedi Order, even though it turns out that the Jedi Order didn't necessarily want her. And Master Indara made that decision, ultimately said, yeah, we're not going to destroy her life any more than we've destroyed it already, and we'll, cover it up and bring her into the Jedi Order. And that was fine for about 10 years, but there's a thing that I don't see mentioned very often in conversation and content on the Acolyte over the course of the season, and that's the fact that there was a line about Master Indara recommending that Osha no longer be trained in the Jedi Order, that she was recommending her be done to the High Council. But ultimately, Osha left of her own accord, at least that's how she sees it, turned in her lightsaber, went off to do whatever. Bum around the galaxy until she got mechanic work, because it was very difficult for her to get any kind of job since the Jedi weren't exactly teaching her any sort of, occupational retraining or re-education skills. But that in itself is a little bit suspicious because of the fact that in other Star Wars storytelling, and particularly recently in Inquisitor's Rise of the Red Blade by Delilah Dawson, there's precedent for people washing out of the Jedi Order and being given opportunities to work in the Jedi Order, work in the Jedi Temple. So they are not just left to their own devices. They're not just thrown out and, good luck, here's your hat, what's your hurry. We don't really hear about situations where people who wash out of the Jedi Order end up going back to their families wherever they were. And anyway, in Osha's case, that wasn't even a possibility because there was no family for her to go back to. So she somehow did not end up working for the Jedi at the Jedi Temple, and that seems to suggest that there's a piece of her history that we don't yet know that might be important to storytelling that's about to come, right? The fact that she was having difficulty releasing attachments, like that much we know for sure. That was a difficulty that she had throughout her time in the Jedi Order. And that is also, if you think about it in terms of classical Jedi training, a suggestion that Osha might have been putting a toe or two on the path to the dark side of the Force. And even though she says that she left of her own accord, or at least that's the story that she's telling everyone, there are still indications that she would love to be back in the Order when she talks about starting to feel her Force powers again, or thinking that Saul was chasing her down in the spaceport because he was going to ask her to come back to the Jedi Order, right? Like that stuff is there too. And so she's feeling, jilted and rejected by the Jedi Order. And so all of these things make for, very, very attractive fodder for someone like Chimere to come in and fully pull her down the dark path. Ultimately, our season started with Osha on the light side and Mae on the dark side, and then it gave us an idea that their paths would flip, that Mae would end up on the light side of things and Osha would end up on the dark side of things. But now it's looking like Osha is going to join Mae on the dark side of things. I don't see how Mae decides to redeem herself in any particular fashion, whether she thinks that there's any need to at this point. How that plays out in terms of Chimere and the Jedi in the season finale, well, we're just going to have to wait, another 36 hours and see, just based on when this episode is dropping compared to when the finale goes live. But that's what I've got for you on this episode of the podcast, talking about Mae and Osha's journey in the Acolyte over the course of the season so far. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoy the show, please help me help more people find this daily dose of Star Wars joy. You can help with that simply by telling people that you know, any Star Wars fans that you know, that this exists for them. You can also please tell the algorithms with your likes and comments and ratings and reviews and joins and follows and subscribes and all that fun stuff. And if you want to do even more, you can take one step further, and just for the price of a cup of coffee or two every month, you can help support me as an independent creator producing this podcast. And you can learn more about that at patreon.com/SW7x7. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyrighted by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.